It is the Amber Nectar podcast. Hello, welcome along. He's Les, he's Andy, I'm Matt. I'm introducing us individually now because not only are you possibly watching on Periscope or downloading it later on SoundCloud, but we now have it on YouTube for you to watch later. How exciting and at the same time rather scary is that? But it's good to have you along, and it's good that now that we've got a YouTube page, we have much to fill it with because there's an awful lot going on. Actual football matches, the departure of football players, maybe even the odd arrival, which didn't look likely a few days ago. So we've got an awful lot to talk about. Let's start with on the pitch, though, Andy. And despite an aggregate defeat, an extremely proud victory on the night against Manchester United, and deserved, and one that I think made City an awful lot of friends.
Well, it certainly made me fall in love a little bit more with them. Beating Man United wasn't something that was really on the manifesto for being a City fan when I started in the 1990s, and I never really thought at any point during that victory on Thursday night that we were going to qualify. For some reason, it just never felt as though we were going to take that next step and perhaps make the final. But it was a thrill to beat Man United. It was a thrill to do it in the way we did because someone very enterprisingly put up on various social media the match stats that Sky Sports relayed at the end of the game, and this wasn't a streaky catch them on the break a couple of times kind of victory. We were by far the better team on the night, and with the exception of one particularly bitter Portuguese, I think everybody would admit that it was a well-earned victory. I've no quarrel with the outcome of the tie, incidentally. Manchester United were by far better than us at Old Trafford, and on a different evening could perhaps have put the tie to bed there and then. But it's to City's credit that no matter how the tie was going, they never really seemed to give it up, did they? At 1-0 at Old Trafford, they didn't fall apart. At 2-0, they kept that whiff, that very faint whiff of potentially turning it around in the second leg alive. And then they did what they needed to do on the night, which was attack, play well and score a couple of goals. And I'm incredibly proud of the entire League Cup run. I think it's been a real highlight in the season that's not been enjoyable for large parts. And to beat Man United, to only lose by a single goal over the leg, is 3 or 4 goals better than I thought we would probably end up.
Yeah, it's been a good League Cup run. Exeter, Stoke, Bristol City, and then winning a penalty shootout against Newcastle before giving Manchester United a semi-fright. I don't think they ever thought they were ever in any real danger of losing the tie at the Circle. But I think we should all be grateful as well that we didn't go 2-0 up and then concede the away goal, because that would have been a sickener, a way of going out, because obviously a 2-0 victory at the Circle against Man United would have taken the game into extra time. And given the team that Marco Silva actually put out at the start of the game, Les, it was the sort of result that I don't think any of us could possibly have expected.
Yeah, there was a bit of consternation before the game. It appeared that we were giving up on the tie, as if we thought, oh well, we're 2-0 down, it's not going to happen, let's put the resis out and let's concentrate on the league. But it didn't turn out like that, it didn't transpire like that, so that's a lesson to us to not question Marco Silva, although we may revisit after we're talking about the Fulham game. You know, we live in an era of alternate facts now, and apparently we didn't beat Manchester United 2-1. Jose reckons it was a 1-1 draw, so who are we to revel in the fact that we'd beaten Manchester United for the first time in over 40 years. I thought the performance was fantastic, and what I'm really enjoying at the moment is the renaissance of David Myler under Marco Silva. Let's call it the Marco Silva effect. We've always, we like David Myler, but we acknowledge that he's limited. But Marco Silva appears to not be prepared to accept those limitations, and is helping him work on him. Because in the Chelsea game, it was him that played the ball on the floor into the box where we should have had a penalty at Chelsea, and I just thought Myler's acrobatic, off the ground, deft, delicate return ball across goal for Nias's goal was just fantastic, and he was one of those moments where it was that David Myler, but yeah, it was, and everything about that move was fantastic. The goal was wonderful. Markovic's ball to pick out Myler was great, but that was a very difficult skill that Myler executed. To jump, to cushion the ball off your instep, not whack it across goal, but just sort of cushion it in the path beyond the keeper and to Nias. I just thought that was fantastic, and that's what I'm really enjoying, is not just looking at bringing new players in that will make us better, but he appears to be making the existing players better and addressing their weaknesses.
I would add also that he timed his run well for Markovic's pass, because he was bang on side. He was exactly level, wasn't he? So he timed the run very well to get to Markovic's pass, and then the way he sort of cushioned that side-footed volley cross away from the two defenders, one of whom was Wayne Rooney, to give Nias that tap-in was terrific. I enjoyed whoever it was out of you two who tweeted that Wayne Rooney had come on to mark the referee. Incidentally, congratulations on a brilliant tweet. So to go out in the semi-finals in a proud way, to the tune of just a one-goal deficit, having never got to the semi-finals before, is a genuine highlight of a season that's had, let's face it, very, very few. Do you think that League Cup run will generate any kind of knock-on effect for the remainder of the Premier League campaign, especially after the next couple of weeks when we've got potentially unwinnable games against Manchester United, Arsenal and Liverpool out the way, in order to try and keep us in the top tier?
Well, might it have an impact in those supposedly unwinnable games? Manchester United at home should be an unwinnable game, and we've just gone and won it. So it makes me think Marco Silva probably won't write those games off. It was interesting after the Chelsea game, wasn't it, that he expressed disappointment in the result. Often you would imagine a manager who's kept Chelsea to 2-0 might think that that's all right and might publicly say so. Marco Silva wanted more. Might he now say to his team, well, you've just beat Man United and you've bloody well deserved to do it. Why don't you go have another go, have a crack at them at Old Trafford? Have a go at Liverpool. We know they're having a ropey time of it. So to answer your question, if there's going to be any kind of knock-on effect from beating Man United in the Premier League, it might come sooner than we think. It also might not. We might get hammered in all of those games. But the precedent is there that we can, with a fair following wind, give a good team a good game.
And we have to give the same good team a good game tomorrow night. Before we talk about that, though, there has been another cup exit in the last week. An exit of a different kind, in a different competition, a different venue, and actually with different players. And it's baffling, isn't it, in how football works like this, that a team that contains Jarrod Bowen and Josh Tymon can give Manchester United a massive run for their money, to pretty much what Andy once famously referred to on this podcast as actual children, but then a much more senior, if not settled side, because we've got a couple of new players, of course, but a much more senior side can go out against a championship club that aren't necessarily any great shakes and really not perform at all and go out of a competition rather weakly and mildly.
Yeah, it was a much mankier kettle of fish, the Fulham Cup game. And yet, once again, you look at the team that was picked and it looked stronger on paper than the 11 that we'd picked for the game against Manchester United. So you never can tell, and whatever team you put out, they've got to apply themselves, and it does appear that there was a little bit of a lack of application. I thought it was worrying that it was roundly said that Markovic looked listless and wasn't putting much effort in. It's only his second game for the club, and he's a player who's effectively failed after a big money move to Liverpool. And so you'd suspect he's come to Hull City to put himself in the shop window, either to remain in the Premier League or get himself a decent move elsewhere. Maybe we need to give him the benefit of the doubt and say maybe he's not playing much regular first team football. Maybe he was just a little bit knackered. But by all accounts, he looked quite uninterested, and that's a little bit of a worry. The Hernandez penalties, I was annoyed at the time, but now I just found them utterly hilarious. I mean, it's like you could speed that up and put the Benny Hill music to it. It had that sense of farce to it, to take such a poor penalty to get saved, to immediately win another penalty, and then put that at the keeper and it goes over. I mean, not entirely sure it would have made a great deal of difference unless we were given 2 penalties and both would have counted as goals had we have scored them, because we were 4-1 down at that point, which is a bit of a shambles in itself. Fulham might be an okay or a decent Championship side, but the team we put out, you'd have expected them to have bested Fulham. But you know, that's what's great about the FA Cup is if your bigger team isn't up for it, you know, if your Giants are feeling dodgy that day, then they can be beaten. And I think we've only really got the redeeming fact of Leeds managing to embarrass themselves more by losing to Sutton, which sort of puts our defeat in perspective. Do like the fact that Sutton's mascot is a giraffe. Don't know why it's a giraffe, but I like that it's a giraffe.
Excellent. I'm going to our people on Periscope who are viewing us right now, and also if you're watching this later on YouTube or listening to the podcast, have we ever missed 2 penalties in a game before? I very much doubt we've ever missed 2 penalties in quick succession quite like that before, but 2 penalties in a game. I mean, I asked our encyclopedic friends Jim McVie and Rich Gardam about this, and they haven't got any thoughts on that. They can't remember. Even the older City fans that we know, like Chris Douglas, our esteemed occasional guest here, and Ian Thompson, can't remember. Anybody out there, have City, apart from in shootouts, obviously, have City ever missed 2 penalties, whether it's within 30 seconds or not? I would suspect not if it has happened in a match before. Then do tell us. You can put it on Twitter as well, or stick it on the comments or on the forums or something like that. We are now out of both cup competitions, Andy, so that cliche of concentrating on the league has been mentioned. In City's case, it actually rings true though, doesn't it? Now we can focus completely on the bread and butter of staying in the Premier League. Given that we've got an owner who is asset stripping our club, the need for another year of Premier League spondulics becomes all the more important, doesn't it?
I guess it does. And now I don't know quite what the club's financial situation is in precise detail, but I'm going to stick my neck out and suggest that it's not brilliant. And I can't imagine that the kind of debts we've got are easily serviceable when you're in the Championship. Just quickly on Fulham, I'm irritated by it because I've just had the feeling that was rather thrown away, as though we were almost subconsciously concentrating on the league before the game. And I think I'd rather we concentrated on the league when we've got no option, rather than when we do still have the ability to do so. The cups are important. The League Cup sustained us through the early part of a promotion bid last season, and we've loved what it brought to this season. And while I'm not suggesting that we're going to win the FA Cup, we know that we can make progress deep into competitions when we're in the Premier League. If we get relegated this season and spend the next 15 years outside the Premier League, then we're going to miss the opportunity to take cups seriously and progress in them. So I'm annoyed by it, and I'd be doubly annoyed if I'd actually made the effort to go. Now, unfortunately, I was far too lazy to actually make the effort. So,
and the game was far too early on a Sunday.
Yeah, and the drinking time beforehand was unhelpfully short. So these are all bad things. But I just get the feeling we tossed it away, and I don't like that. And I hope Marco Silva, who appears to be a man who expresses a wish for high standards, my guess is that he wasn't very pleased by it either. So we may learn some useful things from it, but I'm cheesed off.
Mm-hmm. Apparently we scored 2 penalties. We missed 2 penalties against Bournemouth in 1964. So there we go. That's the only example we've come up with so far. One other thing from the Fulham game, though, that I suppose we can talk about with a mild smirk on our collective faces, is that our goal was a classic diving header. We don't do diving headers very often. The only one I can immediately think of was one scored by David Livermore at home against, I think, Stoke City in a 1-1 draw in our promotion season under Phil Brown. That's the only one that leaps to mind right now. But yeah, scoring with a diving header, it might have ended up being a consolation diving header, although it did bring the game level at the time.
Yeah, indeed it did, and you did wonder at the time if City were going to up the game and then go on to win the tie, but bizarrely at that point it all went wrong.
Giovanni at West Brom in the Premier League, someone's just said. Good diving header, yes.
Stuart Elliott must have scored a diving header, mustn't
he? He scored a lot of airborne headers. Whether he was actually diving downwards rather than sailing over somebody's head or climbing on their shoulders, I can't immediately remember. Somebody's also pointed out that wonderful disallowed goal by Richard Garcia at West Ham. That was one of the best diving headers I've ever seen. It's just a pity it didn't count. Anyway, let's gloss over that. So, before we talk about the two huge Premier League games that we've got this week scheduled before our next podcast, it is right now transfer deadline day. The window slams shut, thank you, in a couple of hours or so. And let's talk about the big deal that's already happened. That's the departure of Robert Snodgrass. He is getting some stick from City fans on social media. My view, for what it's worth, is that he doesn't deserve any of it.
I do think he acted petulantly towards the end. Whether he refused to train, whether he refused to play, I don't know. But I think Marco Silva's come out and said that he told him he wanted to leave. But to me, the issue isn't Snodgrass's behaviour post Silva's arrival. It's what happened before that, and I feel the club are culpable of tacitly driving him away. If you want to keep a player, you don't leave it till clubs can speak to a player till just about when the transfer window's about to open. You don't leave it till then to offer a new contract. You don't extend somebody's contract and tell them by email. It's bad form. And if you really want to keep a player, you have it all done and dusted before other teams even have the option of making bids for a player. And then what do we see? The club was accepting bids, multiple bids. We rebuffed West Ham, but then we said to Burnley and Middlesbrough, yeah, we'll accept your bids. And then West Ham came in with an improved offer on the first one. If you're a player, you're not going to feel wanted, and that goes for Jake Livermore too. Jake Livermore didn't agitate for a deal. It's pretty clear that Silva's been told you only bring in players in if you let players go, and so he's taken the decision we need to sell a couple of players in order to bring people in. Well, if that's the case, then the players, it's a fait to comply. Whoever goes, the players know that if a bid comes in, it's going to be accepted, and they're going to be encouraged on the way. So I don't really buy this turning it on Snodgrass. If I was Snodgrass, I think I would have been annoyed at the conduct of the club, and I think I would have been minded to go as well. And once you know that the club are making no effort to keep you the field in bids, then you're going to think, okay, well, I might as well get the best I can out of this deal. But it just seems to me, Snodgrass is getting stick for the way he behaved at the end, but I don't really see his situation as being too different to Livermore, in that there's some people saying, oh, these players owed us because we stuck by them during difficult periods. But loyalty is a two-way street, and it appears to me we'd shown both of these players no intention of keeping them.
You see, somebody's just put on Periscope, and this has irritated me, that we paid him for 15 months when he was injured, and then he's just sacked us off like that. Were we supposed to not pay him? He got injured on duty for Hull City. What are you supposed to do in that situation? Say, oh, we're only going to give you 10% of your salary because you're of no use to us. That's not supporting one of your crucial members of staff who has suffered, and let's not forget, 15 months is a long time. That's a career-threatening injury if you are out for 15 months. So he suffered an injury that's had all sorts of psychological effect on him, no doubt, as well as the actual effect on the knee that was knacked at where was it? It was QPR, wasn't it? And then what we're supposed to do at that point? Say, oh, we're only going to give you 10% of your salary because you're of no use to us. That's a straw man argument, and it really annoys me that people are saying because he was out of action for 15 months and we had the good grace, it makes it sound like we were doing him a favour by paying him his salary when he was an employee of the club, then he should somehow show us an element of what that correspondent said, loyalty. Now, yeah, loyalty can be defined in so many ways. Loyalty is about making sure that when you've got good players, that you supplement them with other good players. And Snodgrass was really outspoken at the start of the year when that famous photograph was taken on the pre-season tour when only 9 first-team players available was Steve Bruce still in charge then? It might have been Mike Phelan by then. But anyway, whoever it was, only 9 players available in pre-season for that trip to Switzerland or Austria or wherever it was. And Snodgrass was regularly giving after-match interviews at least with an undercurrent of complaints. He wasn't necessarily calling out the ownership and saying this is ridiculous, this is not right. He presumably knew that there was probably gross misconduct charges waiting for him if he was to say something absolutely direct like that. But he was the one saying, we have got too small a squad, we need more players, we need good players, and this club and these fans deserve them. Now, not many other players have said things like that under the Allen regime, when things have clearly gone spectacularly badly wrong behind the scenes, but Snodgrass did. Snodgrass was putting the good of the team and the good of the club and the good of the supporters first, as far as I was concerned, when he was saying things like that. He had the balls to actually call out, even if he did it sort of discreetly, subtly, and, you know, in a way that could be defined in two different ways, just to protect his own backside a little bit, but he had the guts to call out the Allens on that, and I think he deserves some respect for that. Let's also not forget that right up until the point he stopped playing for City, when stopped playing because of initially this muscle injury that's now turned into a transfer to West Ham, he was our best player this season. He rescued that point against Burnley in the 95th minute with that free kick. Some of those free kicks are, that he scored this season, absolutely glorious. Some of his goals in general, the one he shoved in against West Brom in his last goal for the club. You know, this guy played really, really well this season. He's genuinely performed, and he's been kind of stabbed in the back a little bit by the conduct of the Allens. Firstly, in the way that they've not been allowed, whoever the management team is, to build a proper team around him and around the other players who were available at the start of the season. But then, as Les has alluded to, this contractual situation. Michael Dawson went on the radio to say, oh no, I haven't been given an extension yet. They heard it and thought, oh, hang on, yeah, we must do something about that, and gave him his extension. Now, this is down to incompetence at the club. It's got nothing to do with the players, except that it will rile them. And if that happens to somebody as professional and as experienced as Dawson, and as professional and experienced as Snodgrass, who can then blame Snodgrass for saying, you're a Mickey Mouse operation, I'm off?
Yes, absolutely. The problem is that you always remember the most recent thing, and that is him possibly, stress possibly, declining to play and train. And that because that's the most recent memory, it does leave a sour taste. And I think that part of it could perhaps have gone differently. Ultimately, I think, firstly, City are contracted to play Snodgrass when he's injured. The idea that they can suddenly withhold it, well... any employment tribunal would simply point to the contract.
That correspondent, if you got injured at work or injured full stop...
Calm down, you're going to pop a vein.
If you got injured at work or injured full stop and you would be entitled, presumably you've got a job, you would be entitled to sick pay of some description. You would also, possibly, depending on the terms of your contract, be entitled to full pay, especially if you've been injured in the course of your work duties, which is exactly what Snodgrass was.
Well, maybe City should have tried statutory sick pay on him, wouldn't you? See how they got by him, what, £100 a week or whatever it is. It's annoying, and I do still stand by a sour taste being left at the end. However, Les is right that the looked in the round. It all comes back to the Allens over and over again, and we sound like bloody stuck records here, doesn't it? But that's only because it's true, and I cannot get over that really terse statement on the club's website on that Friday saying that we've extended all these contracts. It had the whiff of ehab about it, that it was actually written by that noted genius, and it's an awful way to go about doing it. These footballers, I'm sure they're aware of their own significant worth, and there's no doubt about they will have associates and they will have an entourage and all that kind of rubbish, but it's how it is, it's how the modern game works, and unfortunately the club don't seem to be on board with that. They seem to want it to be in a slightly more Victorian mill owner kind of operation. You can't do that anymore, you absolutely can't, because if you do, other clubs will come in and they will stroke the players' egos in the way that you simply have to do in the modern day.
Apologies for being ranty, I've got a bad back. However, one last thing very briefly on Snodgrass before I hand back to Les. Just because he couldn't play for those 15 months, that doesn't mean he wasn't discharging his duties as a footballer for Hull City. It's not just about playing football matches, even though that's their actual job. He would have had to go in for regular physio, go in for regular checks. He would probably have had some form of counselling with City because he was in a career-threatening situation. And he would have done all the community-based stuff that footballers always do. It's not as if he was just going to be sat at home with his knee up on a coffee table watching watching Jeremy Kyle all day and then picking up 15 grand a week or whatever it was for his trouble.
I've heard Snodgrass was a big fan of Judge Judy. A view I can't subscribe to is that because footballers are well compensated for their efforts, that's okay to treat them poorly. And, you know, footballers are human beings like the rest of us in that they want to feel valued by their employer. And I think the crux of it is our employer, the club's owners do not value the club's employees, whether it's a midfielder scoring goals and then getting injured, or whether it's a part-time member of staff who collates the Prozone, Optastats, whatever they are. Or, for example, if you work in the ticket office,
Exactly.
They're quite happy to just get rid of the ticket office and replace them with those fruit machine-looking things. That's just the way that they treat people. And why is it going to rub footballers up the wrong way any less than it would if we do? You know, if an employer's made to feel unwanted, they'll probably look for another job. And that's the thing about football. It's not just a case of, you know, looking in the other job on Indeed or looking in the paper. You know, you've got Premier League football clubs that'll say, why don't you come to us, we'll give you a much better deal, we'll give you more wages, and then you send your agent in to try and bleed as much of them as you can. You know, just don't feel that we can go about it. And, you know, I think that the term asset stripping's been used a few times recently, and a few people have rolled their eyes and mocked it. And I don't necessarily think it's asset stripping as in with a view to now, but it's more with a view to later. You look at the fact that we've gotten rid of 2 players for 20 million quid, and that doesn't look like much of that is going to get reinvested in transfers unless we pull off some stellar signings tonight. And I suppose there is still a couple of hours, but I don't think your best deals get done on the last day of the transfer window. And largely we've replaced those players with loans that are going to expire come the end of the season. Silva's deal is only till the end of the season. We've got lots of players out of contract in the summer, and the cynical part of me just feels we've been prepared for relegation and they can still bleed money out of the club by running the club outrageously cheaply in the Championship. Screw where we finish. We've got 2 years, maybe 3 years of parachute payment. Just run it really cheap and just siphon it off. I don't necessarily think it's asset stripping in terms of plunder all the money now. It seems to me to be more of a long-term plan of asset stripping and own pocket lining by the owners. I might be being cynical on that, but that's how it appears to me.
Right, okay. As far as I remember, City have only ever had one German playing for them, and he was
Nick Proschwitz.
Nick Proschwitz. I think we've only had one Greek player, and he was...
No, we've had 2.
That was 2, is it?
No, I'm not so sure. We had Stelios.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of. Jim McVee's watching this, shouting out the names at the moment. Go on. Can you think of any more? And if we have another Greek one, do shout it out. And we actually went through this in the pub at the Vines before the West Brom game, and went through loads of different nationalities of City players and ones that we haven't yet had. One that came up was an Italian. Now, if only we had somebody who was an expert on Italian football sitting in this room. Oh, we do. And he's an ex-Sampdoria. I don't know whether we can turn the camera around for the YouTube people, but there's lots of Sampdoria shirts in the kit room here. Some match worn, some not. But none of them were worn by Ranocchia.
Well, we have had an Italian player before, but not an outfield player. We had Vito Minoni on loan from
yes.
Arsenal, the goalkeeper. But Ranocchia is the first Italian outfield player and the first Italian full international. You can, when on the face of it, a 6'5" defender who's been capped by Italy 20 odd times sounds absolutely incredible. But I really want this kid to do well. I want City's first. I'm a big fan of Serie A, and I want the club's first outfield Italian to be really good. I just wish it wasn't him, because.
Can I just, before you go into your no doubt extremely reasonable reasons? There you go. That's good English, isn't it? Before you go into your extremely reasonable motives for scorning this signing. Dare I suggest that Marco Silva's scouted him a bit more than you have, perhaps?
It may be. Although, the interesting thing is, we were linked with Ranocchia before Silva arrived. He was being spoken of as a potential signing when Phelan was a manager. And I find it really interesting that we don't have managers anymore, we have head coaches. And to me, the big difference between a head coach and a manager is a manager has a say-so in the signings, and a head coach gets given a load of players and he uses them. So who knows whether it's Silverman or not. You'd like to think Silva's had some input into it. Ranocchi is a funny one because he was being held up as like the next Alessandro Nesta at Inter Milan, and it all went wrong for him. His confidence was shot, and basically Inter have spent the last 2 years in a desperation to get rid of him. They don't want shut. They've had enough. He managed to get booed at a shirt launch by the fans, which, you know, I mean, I know Italian fans are that much more demanding than the British counterparts, but, you know, booing somebody at a shirt launch seems a little bit harsh. I know him because he was on loan to Sampdoria last season and he played 14 games. So I've seen him in person when I went to see Sampdoria, and BT practically put every Sampdoria game on television last year. So I saw pretty much every minute he played for Sampdoria, and I think he was sent to the Genoese club to sort of regain some of the confidence, and hopefully Inter were looking. He certainly didn't regain confidence at Sampdoria. He stunk. For a tall player, he's not particularly dominant in the air. He isn't particularly mobile. I lost count of the amount of times where forwards were just skipping past him, and I think he's coming into a Premier League which is a little bit pacier than Serie A. And his decision making was poor too. He had a tendency to just drift out of position, and I really want the kid to do well, but I can only speak not from the statistics, because somebody showed these bizarre stats that Sky was showing where they said, oh, heading ability 19 and tackling ability 16, and I don't really know what those stats were based on. All I can tell you is what I've seen of the kid, and he's been bloody awful.
Not doubting that for 1 minute. So explain, because I've never seen him play, why has he got 21 Italy caps? I'm not saying anything you've said is wrong, but he's got 21 Italy caps, and they're usually a country that produces good defenders. He must have had to beat a lot of people to get them. Yeah,
they're not exactly renowned for flowing attacking international football, are they, Italy? They're known for their strong defences.
Yeah, we'll have a conversation about Roberto Baggio later and Gianfranco Zola. But you're right. Italy is well known for its...
Italy win things through not conceding goals.
They are known for the strength of the goalkeepers and the robust defenders. I mentioned the fact that his confidence is shot. Before his confidence was shot, he was a very good young prospect, and I think that's where the majority of his international caps come. It could just simply be that Inter broke him. You know, Inter are a club who expect to be challenging for and winning the Italian title, and I think that has been heightened since Mourinho left Inter, because he won the treble, and they've not really done a great deal since. They've sort of flirted with being decent, so I think there's been a lot of pressure on the players to replicate the success, and it could just be that's gotten to a young player, and it's warped him. But if he moved to Sampdoria to regain confidence, it really didn't work. Now, to me, the biggest hope is, we spoke earlier of Marco Silva taking David Myler, addressing his weaknesses and improving him. So if that 20-odd caps for Italy defender is still there, the big hope is that Silva can re-establish his confidence and resurrect his career. He's not somebody I expect to be here for years. It's another one of these, I think, Markovic style signings where he's come to put himself in the shop window for later on. But to do that, he's got to do well for us, and I really, really want him to do well.
There's only one way to find out, and that's to let him play a match and see how he gets on.
That's true, and I'm not trying to prejudge.
How old is he?
Him. He's 28 now, I think. I'm not trying to prejudge how he's going to play for City. But normally, when it's like we got associated with Marvin Ziegler and Kamil Grzycki, and the first thing you normally do is you go on YouTube and you see what it looked like, and every player looks awesome on YouTube. Even Andy's highlight reel on YouTube make him look like a Jordanian Premier League midfielder.
Thanks.
So I really wish the kid well. The reason he's called Frog is that's what Ranocchia means in Italian. His surname is Frog.
Okay, you've written quite a lot of names down on your little A4 pad here, but I'm conscious that in case we don't sign any of these, people are going to watch this podcast and think, what a bunch of morons just doing idle speculation on players that Hull City don't actually get.
Well,
I mean, we know who we have got. We've got Ivandro in, we've got El Abdellaoui in, we've got Markovic in, and now we've got Ranocchia in.
All of the players I've written down are people who August publications such as The Telegraph and The Guardian and The Daily Mail. I did say August, didn't I? Maybe I meant September with that last one. But they've all linked, and we have had some. But some it seems like Max Gradle. Who knows what's happening with Max Gradle? I love the fact that he was seen in St Stephen's Nando's.
And then he got a call from DJ Campbell and went off again.
Exactly, it reminds me of the DJ Campbell thing where he said, right, I'm off for some lunch, and he never came back.
Well, that was a bullet we dodged with DJ Campbell, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, true. It just, nobody quite knows whether the Gradle deal's off now or whether it's on, but I wonder if he was a backup in case the pursuit of the Polish kid at Stade Rennais, Kamil Grzycki, and we don't have a particularly good record of players called Kamil. But this kid looks quite good. Polish international. He's played at the last 2 Euros. He can play on either wing and he takes free kicks. So there's your potential ready-made dead ball replacement for Snodgrass. And I wonder if Gradle was sort of a secondary option, or maybe we was going to sign him too. And if it's off, maybe they just run out of, the extra hot peri-peri at Nando's, and he's cleared off.
And he probably didn't even leave a tip. I forgot to mention Nias on the list of players that we have signed. Funny you should mention now a record of players called Kamil, because I've got the 365 up on my phone and a little thing came through saying rumour Hull City connected with Kamil, and that was it, because that's all that would fit on the little headline thing, and you've got to swipe your screen down to read the rest of it. And I just had this image for a moment that Marco Silva had seen this wonderful Algerian called Kamil Gilas and decided to take a chance on him.
Don't give Ehab ideas, for crying out loud.
All right. One out today is Alex Bruce, who hasn't played this season. He's been injured all season. And I suspect, having gone on loan, I'm assuming for the rest of the season, to Wigan Athletic in the Championship, to play for Warren Joyce, that we're probably not going to see Alex Bruce play for City again.
Is it Wigan he's gone to?
I think it's Wigan he's gone to. I don't understand it, because we're not exactly overburdened with central defenders at the moment. So,
well, the new guy, Ranocchia, is a centre-back. We've still got Maguire, we've still got Dawson. Davis is now out for a month, 2 months.
That's it. We've only just got enough to play 3-5-2 should we ever wish to, and we don't have any backups. So while Alex Bruce is probably not a Premier League quality centre-back, he's all right and he can actually play there.
And he can defend.
He can defend. We've all enjoyed rewatching him wiping 2 Liverpool players out in quick succession from a little while ago, and he's better than nothing. He's better than nothing and more close to nothing. That's what I don't understand.
It's the tackle on Diego Costa at Stamford Bridge in 2 seasons ago, whenever it was, that he actually got given. He won the ball cleanly, but it was such a hard tackle. I mean, it was so fierce the way that Costa went flying up in the air and landed on the floor that I think the referee gave a free kick for sort of embarrassing an international striker rather than for any actual foul play that had been committed. And Bruce sort of laughed at the referee as he went back to take his position for the free kick. But I think we're going to miss Alex Bruce, aren't we?
Yeah, I think so. I quite like him. He's another player with limitations, but every now and again he would really surprise you with an exceptional performance, like, when he essentially had Tiffy Wonder, Luis Suarez in his back pocket. But I do find it an odd decision. I mean, what we'd glossed over when we were talking about the Fulham was the utterly bizarre decision to rush Curtis Davies back. It just seemed completely unnecessary, and it's spectacularly blown up in our faces because he's now out for 8 weeks, which essentially means Ranocchia is going straight in because we need an immediate replacement. And you just wonder why we bothered doing that. And Silva seems quite measured and thoughtful in his decisions. that decision seemed incredibly rash and needless.
We don't know whether there's been any politics involved because of Alex Bruce's family connections. And it may well be that now he's fit to play football, Ehab said, I need him out because look, Ehab is an unreasonable man. It's perfectly viable, I think, that Ehab has said to Marco Silva, now that he's fit to play football, let's get him playing football somewhere else for the remainder of his contract. I need him out because he's a reminder of somebody who I don't want to be reminded of. I think that's entirely possible. I wouldn't put it past the Allams at all to have told Marco Silva to get rid of Alex Bruce purely for that reason, irrespective of how vital right now Alex Bruce could have been to our back four or back three, depending on how Silva chooses to play him. And yet, throughout his time at City, I think Alex Bruce has never been Steve Bruce's son, first and foremost. I think the only time possibly that he had that thrown at him was when the contract renewals under Steve Bruce came through. When Stephen Quinn left, and Paul McShane and Liam Rosenior were both released, but Alex Bruce got another year, which was then extended to 2 years, wasn't it? And that's when the daddy's boy arguments, the only time I think they've ever happened in Alex Bruce's time as a Hull City player, the daddy's boy arguments came out simply because we all wanted Paul McShane and Liam Rosenior to stay, and would have quite happily seen Alex Bruce stay as well. And it's not as if Alex Bruce wasn't unuseful the moment that he was labelled briefly with that tag after McShane and Rosenior left. He did look limited, especially in the Premier League at times, but there were times when he certainly did not look limited in the Premier League, because sometimes all you need is somebody who can win the football, whether it's aerially or on the ground. And he's a very, very good defender. He's a very decent winner of the football. What he can then do with the football after he's won it is, of course, a different matter entirely. But that depends on whether you're looking for somebody who is able to sort of spray the ball about from the back. You know, not everybody plays like Rio Ferdinand. That's why Jamie Carragher hardly won any England caps, despite pushing 700 times for Liverpool, because he wasn't renowned as a great deliverer of the football once he'd won it. He just would give it to Steven Gerrard ahead of him or one of the full-backs to the side and go back to the position that he occupied and wait for the next time he needed to challenge a striker. And Alex Bruce was that sort of player. And during that period when we had three at the back, he was one of them, alongside Curtis Davis, and Paul McShane or James Chester, of course. Those three started at the back in our FA Cup final. Alex Bruce involved in Curtis Davis's goal and very nearly scored the third. He has got moments in his own City career which will not see him regarded as manager's son, but Alex Bruce, competent and admirable Hull City defender, and I think every City fan should wish him well.
I'm sure every City fan will wish him well, because I think he was just all right. I must say, I don't think I regard him quite as highly as you, Matt, and that's not to say that you're necessarily wrong. I've always thought of him as all right. I have always thought of him as being here on his own merits, and I never really understood the nepotism charge because Steve Bruce dropped him loads.
He did, and there's one other thing that I should add, just in the interest of balance, because I'm not blowing smoke up Alex Bruce's arse. I do think there were times when he looked hopelessly out of place, but that was more down to the manager. I won't say his father, his manager, occasionally playing him in central midfield. Do you remember that night at Crystal Palace when he was put in as a central midfielder? And we lost, I think, 4 or 5-2 on the night. It was quite a game of football, but we were, despite the fact that it was a 6-goal or 7-goal thriller, whatever it was, 4-2 was it? We were never really in the game, and Alex Bruce spent the entire evening in the centre of midfield, looking like that not only had never played in central midfield before, but he was playing actually the wrong sport. But that's down to a bad tactical decision, even though it's the player who gets exposed and ridiculed for it. Of course, if you happen to be the son of the manager who puts you in that position, then the ridicule is twofold, isn't it? It becomes personal as well as professional. Fortunately, it didn't happen too often, and maybe I don't recall now specifically for the time, but maybe we had a bit of an injury crisis as far as that position on the park is concerned. It only happened a couple of times, and as an experiment, it was acknowledged by Steve Bruce that it failed. He acknowledged it quite quickly that it failed, and he never played in the centre of midfield again. But he's gone to Wigan. He'll play for Warren Joyce for the remainder of the season. James Weir has gone there as well. That leaves us with one more. It's almost like an elephant in the room, or it might not be now. Nothing's come up on Periscope to say that he's gone yet, but there has been this £10 million offer from Burnley for Andy Robertson. But on this occasion, it looks like that our dashing head coach has put his foot down with the Allams.
Does seem that way, and good for him. I think there was some people querying if Robertson was sold under his nose, whether Silva would consider his position. And he had said when the questions were asked on Saturday about Maguire, if he was likely to go, if he was attracting interest, and Silva said it was impossible that Maguire could go, and I think he'd since said, we really can't afford to lose any other players. I think he would have been quite happy to let Robertson go, take the 10 million, and then maybe look to spend a couple of million on a replacement. I think that's where the Marvin Ziegler discussion come from. He's the Dutch left back at Sporting Lisbon. I wonder if it was a case of we look to sell Robertson for 10 million and then maybe bring in this Dutch kid for a little bit less. But there's risks involved in bringing in lots of new players, because you've got to hope they all bed in very quickly. And if you've got a talented player already in the club, keep on to the talented player within the club. So it does look as if Silva's expressed dissatisfaction at the idea of Robertson's being sold, and it does look like he's got his own way. I unabashedly love Marco Silva. There's no shame in my game.
Somebody on Periscope's just done the Les and Marco sitting in a tree, K-I-S-S-I-N-G.
You should have done it in Portuguese. I'd have been impressed then.
But I don't speak Portuguese, so it would have been
racist,
mildly difficult. All right, we've got Manchester United tomorrow night. Let's face it, we're pretty much exhausted with playing Manchester United. Were it ever thus, eh?
Give it 10 years.
Yeah, indeed, and we'll be begging to go back to Old Trafford. No, we'll go to Old Trafford tomorrow night, Premier League game this time, after all the fun and games in the League Cup. And then it's Liverpool at home on... it is Saturday, isn't it? It's a normal Saturday kickoff, isn't it? They're playing Chelsea right now, having lost 3 home games in a row in 3 different competitions. We'll see whether, from tonight's result against Chelsea, whether it's worth playing Liverpool now for this weekend's game. We've only played Liverpool 7 times as equals in a division. First going back to the 54-55 season, then of course most recently in our last Premier League season in 14-15. And I suppose as far as league games are concerned, the 3-1 win under Steve Bruce in 2013, sorry, it was in the December of that season, is the one that we'll talk about most enthusiastically, because it was the first time we beat them. And I remember a lovely deflected goal by Jake Livermore. I remember David Myler's joy running to the corner flag when he got the second after Steven Gerrard equalised with a free kick. And then a rather marvellous own goal sealed it for City. It was one of the great, and it was a night. It was a great night, or at least I think it was a Sunday afternoon, wasn't it? So it was dark by the time the game kicked off, because it was in December. But it felt like one of those great nights at the Circle.
And do we all remember what the lead up to that game featured?
Go on.
You can all die when you want.
Ah!
And City scored while the 1904 City Till We Die chant was going on. So if you were ever simple enough to believe that it was putting the team off, you had a relatively eloquent retort from the players themselves. It was.
I mean, I know that Tom Huddleston hit the shot that led to the own goal for the third one, and a lot of people wondered whether Tom Huddleston would finally have to have a haircut as a consequence of him hitting that shot. But when it was given as an own goal, it wasn't the case. We did then beat, of course, Liverpool in 2014-2015 as well. We actually won our last 2 home games in the league against Liverpool, so let's go for the hat-trick. The Michael Dawson only goal last time round to give City a 1-0 win. I suppose for fans of our vintage, Les, born in the 70s, it's the FA Cup tie in 1989 that we think about most when it comes to home games against Liverpool.
Indeed, yeah. I mean, that game featured the greatest commentary of all time. I love Barry Davies as a commentator, and it sort of sticks in my craw that John Motson's always been viewed as this sort of the bell cow when it comes to BBC footballing commentators, because I think Barry Davies was great, and he had a cracking performance that day with such gems as that worked well, Whitehurst.
And indeed you can hear that at the front of this and every single audio edition of this podcast. Jobson didn't look!
Indeed, that commentary is just full of them, but also the game itself was surreal. City leaving the pitch at half-time 2-1 up.
What makes that more remarkable, just very quickly, is that we were 1-0 down until, I think, 6 minutes before half-time, and Whitehurst and Edwards scored within like 3 minutes of each other. And you know, by the time John Barnes had scored that goal after about 10-15 minutes to put Liverpool in front, I think we were all already thinking Liverpool were reigning champions. They were very close to winning the league title eventually in that season, 88-89. It wouldn't have surprised any of us if we'd gone in at half-time 3 or 4-0 down as a result of that. But having gone a goal down to a pretty much full-strength Liverpool side, we fought back, and we fought back brilliantly.
There was an element of luck involved. I mean, Whitehurst's goal was enabled by an untimely slip by Gary Ablett. You know, he fell over, he could have cut the ball out, and that led to Whitehurst bundling it in. And the second one, there was a cross put in, and
Whitehurst won the header, didn't he?
Certainly Jan Mulby in the middle of defence, he froze, he might have even handballed it. There was a lot of dithering. There was, as Barry Davies said, hesitation from Liverpool, none from Edwards, and Edwards clinically finished it.
You see that Barry Davies mentioned it in commentary at the time. Ironic that it should be the man who spent some time here on loan after highlighting Gary Ablett's mistake in the build-up to Billy Whitehurst's equaliser. So yeah, a former City defender followed by a future City manager making the rickets that led to City going 2-1 up in that game. Mulby was just fresh on as a sub. Do you remember Andy Payton pretty much kicked in Gary Gillespie's shin very, very early on, and he had to be helped from the pitch in absolute agony. Second half, John Aldridge scored twice with straightforward chances. Richard Jobson should have closed down on one of them.
One of them was almost a carbon copy of Whitehurst's goal for City, the sort of ball across, and he sort of swung a leg at it and sort of swept it in. It was very similar, I thought.
And I mean, that was 3-2 with still half an hour to go. Andy Payton could have scored right at the end. I remember a cross came in, and I think both Whitehurst and Edwards actually kicked fresh air where the ball was in front of them in the 6-yard box, and it was deflected back to Payton, and he had a shot blocked by, who was that blonde left back there? David Burrows, that's right. And he had that shot blocked. That was kind of City's only chance, really. Liverpool did shut up shop very well after going back in front. 18,000 squeezed into Boothby Park that day, which was Boothby Park's capacity crowd. And we got like 6, 7, 8,000. We were lucky to get 10,000 if Man City were visiting, which they did at the start of that season. But it was 4-figure crowds all the way, even in the second tier under a new manager with a half a dozen decent players. And then Liverpool come to town and we fill the ground up. You had to go to the Shrewsbury game the week before, though, if you weren't a season pass holder, in order to go to the City game against Liverpool and collect a voucher saying, I was at Shrewsbury, please sell me a ticket for Liverpool. Because otherwise the number of sort of hangers-on from Hull who weren't remotely interested in City would have been, we might as well make a bit of extra money out of them while you can. There was also the League Cup tie, which was the only time, this is a decade later, the only time, very briefly, that City were on telly live from Boothby Park.
And we got paggered, didn't we? But then, if we look back to 1989, those were glory days compared to the late 1990s, and I can't quite remember who we beat to qualify to play Liverpool. I have it in my mind it might have been Stockport, but I'm not...
Bolton?
Maybe it was Bolton, yeah, I can't remember. The League Cup was just a constant source in fact, everything was a constant source of misery in the 1990s, but playing Liverpool was welcome respite, apart from the fact that we went and got Neil Mann knacked during that game, didn't we?
By Michael Owen, wasn't it? Yeah. I think David Brown scored in the home game, in that home game, didn't he? But they beat us substantially, didn't they? And then had a bit of fun and games at Anfield. But yeah, and what when you watch the footage is on Tiger Tube of that Liverpool game, or some of it is at least. I think the end is missing. It is the only time we were ever live on telly from Boothby Park. But compared to the Liverpool game on Match of the Day against from 1989, it was on the other side of the ground. By then, the gantry had shifted, and we were watching Hull City play from the opposite side.
Well, I seem to think the gantry only shifted for that one game. They put cameras in Kempton, which was at that point...
they did it for the Chelsea game as well.
Right.
For the when Chris Sutton had that madness after he scored, it was on the other side of the pitch then as well.
It was probably a good thing, because then you couldn't see a completely empty Kempton for the entire game, because that would have been a dispiriting viewing, and thankfully the Kempton reopened a couple of years later.
Last thing, we drew 0-0 with Liverpool on the last day of the season in 2010 before our relegation had been confirmed. It was our last game in the Premier League for 3 seasons. And there's a brilliant photograph somewhere of the pitch invasion and loads of kids going towards Steven Gerrard, and somebody, and it's a girl because you can see the nail varnish on her fingernails, trying to rip off the Premier League badge from the side of his Liverpool shirt. So that photo will exist somewhere. Thank you for watching. If you're watching us on YouTube, then we hope it worked okay and everything. If you're not following us on Twitter, because obviously with YouTube it might not be Hull City people necessarily watching us, you might have found us by accident. We are at Amber_Nectar, that's right, isn't it? Ambernectar.org is our website address. Go and read our articles, contribute to our forums, and we will do another podcast next week.